Hey, audit friends and family. Ever walk into a meeting and felt like the villain before you've even said a word? Well, that's how many audit clients feel, and it's time to change the narrative. This week on Audit Bites, we're exploring the power of empathy in auditing, from understanding a client's perspective to stepping into their shoes to creating more productive audits. Tune in and listen to how empathy isn't just a soft skill, but it's a superpower that every auditor needs. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to Audit Bites, the podcast that helps auditors become awesome. Join us for bite sized info and education to excel in your auditing career.
All right, audit friends and family, we are live for another episode of Audit Bites. And you're probably thinking, didn't you just do one? Yeah, we're trying to end the new year off right. And today we are talking about, well, empathy. Welcome to episode number 68. Welcome to episode number 68. Empathy in auditing, turning resistance into collaboration. My man Clarence is here. Good to see you, Clarence. We need to catch up, man. It's been a while. Clarence, while you're here, let me ask you a question. Does everything sound okay? Because I've got to do something that I had to do last week, and that is I've got to switch my internet connection. Clarence. But let me know, can you hear and can you see very well? Give me 1 second. We'll be right back while I switch internet connections. All right, friends. So, auditors, picture this. You walk into a meeting ready to discuss the audit findings that you've spent weeks preparing, and the client immediately shuts down. But not because the findings are accurate, but because they feel like you just don't get them. Does that sound familiar to anyone? You see, for many audit clients, this is their experience when dealing with us. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The skill that isn't in your audit handbook but probably should, and that is empathy. Welcome to Audit Bites, the podcast where we break down auditing into bite sized, digestible pieces with a side of humor and humanity. I am Robert Berry, your host, and today's topic might change the way you approach your clients forever. We're diving into how to be empathetic with audit clients because let's face it, auditing isn't just about the numbers, it's about people. And by the end of this episode, you'll have some actionable strategies to turn tense audit relationships into collaborative partnerships. So let's get started. As I always say, what is an Audit Bites episode without a story time? So go with me into dreamland and let's tell a story here and feel the real deal, Holyfield. It's good to see you, man. We really need to catch up. I've been wondering about you. Looks like everything is fine with you, but yeah. Clarence says he missed the last episode. It was early in the morning, Clarence, but I ran it 2 or 3 times. It's all good, man. It is all good. Stick around for the first one in the new year. That one's going to be a real interesting one. I might talk a little bit more about that one in a minute. But story time. Let me take you back to one of my early audits. It was at a mid-sized logistics company, and the audit, well, it wasn't going that great, but what audits do go great? Every meeting felt like we were simply pulling teeth. The client was short with answers and the tension was real thick. Anybody else been there before? Clarence, I know you have because we've had some discussions. And then in one particularly awkward meeting, I decided to switch gears. See, what we would normally do is go right into the meetings and dive right into our questions after, the pleasantries. How are you? But we know that no one really wants to know how you're doing. We all say it now as a formality. But instead of just diving right in, I noticed one of the clients had this real look of concern on their face. And I just said, "Hey, what's really been keeping you up at night? Like, really?" And I know that's a generic question we all ask, but I wasn't asking it from the audit standpoint. I was really wondering what's been keeping you up at night. And he looked at me for a moment. The whole room fell silent. And then he started talking about shipping delays that they were having, staffing shortages they were having, and how overwhelmed everyone was in the entire office. That one question kind of shifted the dynamic because I started going down that road of asking, well, why are these things a problem for you? Then I realized we weren't just there to check the boxes. I really wanted to help. They really wanted to be helped. And from that point, we started this collaborative approach. It took a little bit more time, but things started to improve, and this audit went smoother than I could have imagined. And that experience taught me that empathy is not just a nice to have for us. It's a critical skill. It can make or break any audit relationship. And today, I'm going to share with you how we can cultivate that just a little bit because what we're going to talk about are 5 ways you can show empathy with your audit clients. 5 ways that you can show empathy with your audit clients. Let me ask, do you think empathy is an important skill, first in life or for auditors? I tell you what, 7 years ago, when I first mentioned the term empathy for auditors, I was at a conference and I was up on the stage and I talked about it and I could look at the other auditors' faces and they were like, yeah. After it was over with, someone, about my age, maybe a little older, you know how we old fogies get in the way sometimes. He came up to me afterwards and he said, why are you talking about that empathy stuff? We are auditors and we don't need to know about that. Wrong answer, my friend. Wrong answer. Being empathetic with our clients' needs is one of the things that separate good auditors from bad auditors. I say that all the time, but when I first started saying it, people looked at me like I was the one-eyed monster. So, 5 ways you can show empathy with your audit clients. Let's just get started with the very first one. The first thing you can do to show empathy with your audit clients is actually care about what your clients do. And I don't mean fake it. I mean genuinely care about what your clients do because it matters. It really, really matters. Now you're probably wondering, what do I mean by that? If you walk into a room thinking that your role as the auditor is the most important thing in the world, then you've already lost your audience. The reality is, what they do is more important than what we do. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. I was auditing a manufacturing company once, and I was, kind of laser focused on the checklist because I had a short period of time to do it within, and I had a lot of work to do. Meanwhile, the plant manager was dealing with machinery breakdowns that had halted production. And because I was just sitting in my little office asking them for all types of paperwork, I'd barely noticed I needed to wrap up my audit. Some things they had promised, and they were slow in getting them to me. And so I came out of my little office, found the plant manager, and began asking him, hey, you promised me these things last week. Where are they? He gave me this look, and I could tell by the look on his face that something was really wrong. So then I finally asked him, okay, look, what is your biggest challenge today? That's when he opened up about the production issues and all types of other things that were happening. And it kind of gave me a different perspective on their priorities. You see, their priorities weren't me, their priorities weren't our little audit. I was taking the absolute wrong approach to dealing with my client. The absolute wrong approach to dealing with my client. Now, once we dug a little deeper, turns out they were having these issues because the plant manager was having issues with people at corporate headquarters. Now, there's an audit issue whenever you can actually help the organization do that thing that they're supposed to do. So that's what we focused on. So when you really care about what your clients do, that's one way to show empathy towards your clients. The other thing is don't just fake it, show a real, genuine interest in them. Show a real, genuine interest in them. So, like I said, the first thing is care about what they do. So, as an auditor, if you really want to care about what they do, show a genuine interest. Instead of just diving straight into, I need to test this control and test that control, ask them, what does a typical day look like for them? That'll really help you understand their business. That'll actually help you be a better auditor. Show a genuine interest. The next thing you want to do is align your work with their goals. Align your work with their goals. Let me explain what I mean by that. If you can frame every audit test or every audit issue in a way that supports their objectives, they're more likely to open up to you because, after all, what they do is far more important than what we do. Oftentimes, we have issues and we present them to clients and we take for granted that they understand the impact of those issues. So instead of just saying, hey, this is wrong, we could say, for example, resolving this issue can help you reduce the downtime and increase efficiency within your factory. Doesn't that sound different? Doesn't that sound like we have their best interest at heart? Instead of talking like auditors and using audit speak all over the place. And my man Phil says, other people matter indeed. Yeah, they do, man. They matter more than we actually give credit for. And I don't think we do it selfishly. I just think that we live with ourselves 24/7. So, of course, we're going to think about ourselves more than other people. Of course, we're going to think about ourselves first. It takes a conscious effort to go from selfish to selfless. We're born selfish. That's kind of how we survive as humans. And that's okay. What's not okay is actually acknowledging that we're selfish. You ever met someone who said, I'm not selfish? They're lying. We all are. A really good person understands that and tries to make an effort to at least empathize and think about the other person. I hate people that say I'm not selfish. We all are. Stop. Don't feed me that load of mess. Marsha's here. Hey, Marsha, hadn't seen you in a while. I guess because I've been traveling, right? I've been all out of the country and everywhere and still trying to get my time zones and everything else straight. So listen, thank you for joining us on today's episode of Audit Bites. We're talking about empathy in auditing. 5 ways to show empathy with audit clients. As auditors, we love our processes, don't we? But empathy really means going beyond the process to understand the people behind it. You see, the tagline of my business is improving people, processes, and profits, because I believe once you improve the people, they'll improve the processes, which will improve the profits. Which brings me to my next way to show empathy for our audit clients, and that is to ask questions beyond the process. Now, you all know I love a good question. Heck, it is why I wrote the book, Ask Better Questions, Get Better Answers, Perform Better Audits, the first and best book about asking questions while auditing. But we've got to ask questions beyond the process. I'll give you an example. During one audit, I remember I kept hammering my clients with procedural questions. and they were giving me the bare minimum: yes, no answers, without thoroughly explaining because, well, I was getting on their nerves. Then I thought about it. Wait, I'm in here bothering them while they actually have work to do. So I started asking questions like, what's the biggest challenge your team faces with this particular process? And boy, that opened up a can of worms about a bottleneck that had been causing delays for months. And that bottleneck happened to be in another department. You see, we thought we were just auditing one department. No, we were auditing a business process. Once we start asking questions about the process, it kind of opened up the floodgates to this is what's not working. And it has to do with this bottleneck that's coming from another department. So the question becomes, how do we ask questions beyond the process? How do we ask questions beyond the process? Okay, I'm going to give you two ways to ask questions beyond the process. And the first, ask open ended questions. Encourage your clients to share their experiences. We have to ask questions beyond the processes that we're auditing. One thing I like to do is ask clients hypothetical questions. For example, if you could improve one thing about this process, what would it be? You see, most times our clients, they know what's wrong. It's just that no one has listened to them. They don't feel heard. They don't feel valued. So they continue to do what they've always been done. Or worse yet, they've told their supervisor what's wrong, and their supervisor has not listened to them. And that's really made them feel bad. So when you come in and you start asking these open ended questions that get to the root cause, they really feel good. They feel like someone is listening, and they feel like maybe, possibly, we can change. So, if you really want to be empathetic towards your audit clients, you need to ask questions beyond the process. In order to do that, the first thing you want to do is ask open ended questions. Now, the next thing you want to do is follow up thoroughly. You ever asked a really good question and you got this answer and you just didn't follow up? You got to show that you're listening by asking follow up questions so that you can gather more information so that you can help your clients. For example, if they mention a bottleneck, ask them, what do you think is causing the delay? And how has it impacted your goals or your ability to achieve your goals and your objectives? Oftentimes we hear someone say, oh, bottleneck, what's happening? Oh, this department's not giving you what they need, what you need. Oh, okay. And then we don't follow up with, how are they not giving you the information? What information do you need? How is it affecting you? That would be like going to the doctor and telling the doctor that your foot hurts, and then he starts patting your head. You can tell that they you can tell that they didn't listen to a thing that you said, but worse yet, that doctor might be ready for a lawsuit if they continue doing things like that. With auditors, what ends up happening to us is we get in an environment where the clients always say, "Where were the auditors?" Because we didn't thoroughly listen to what was happening. All right. So I'm so glad you guys decided to join me on today's episode: 5 ways to show empathy with audit clients. We are not done yet. We are not done yet. I think right now we're on reason number 3. So let me ask a question. Have you ever had that one friend? Everybody has that one friend that simply could not lie to you. No matter how much they tried, well, they oftentimes give up trying. And the reason that they couldn't lie to you is because everything that they're thinking is just written all over their face. You come out wearing something that looks crazy on you and you ask them, how does this look? And they try to say, well, it looks okay. But then you see that wrinkle in their forehead. That one friend, they couldn't lie to you to save their lives. Anybody have a friend like that? Thankfully, most of my friends will just say it. But, we all have that one friend that we go to when we want to hear the truth because they never, ever, ever could lie to you. Phil, you got a friend like that? Clarence, Marsha, you guys got friends like that? So I have one. But now I know you're probably wondering, what in the world does that have to do with auditing? I see some thumbs up emojis in the chat, so somebody agrees with me. But I know you're probably wondering, what does that have to do with auditing? Okay, sometimes when dealing with our audit clients, the most important things are the things that aren't said. We have to listen to the unspoken, the body language, the tone, the hesitation. That can tell you a lot, more than words ever could. My grandmother used to tell me, when you're dealing with people, listen to what they do. I used to think she was crazy. I'm like, listen to what they do. You can't. How do you listen to what they? But as I got older, I truly understood what she meant. Now Phil says, "Yep, I got a friend like that," and Clarence, "Yep, sure, everybody has a friend like that." We actually appreciate those friends because we know we're going to get the truth from them one way or another. Unfortunately, my audit friends, when we're dealing with clients, they're not going to be that open with us, partially because they don't trust us, partially because they don't know us. And if they don't know us, then how can they trust us? So, our third reason, or third way to exercise empathy with audit clients is to listen to the unspoken. I remember one client, we would talk to them about what was going on, and it seemed like the office was in chaos. Seemed like the office was in chaos. But every time we asked this one client what was wrong, they kept saying, "Everything is fine." But you could tell by the look on their face that something was wrong. In meetings, they had their arms crossed, and it wasn't cold in this building. So their tone told us something different. We decided to take a different approach. We gently asked if there were any challenges that they hadn't mentioned to us. Then they mentioned some issues with data integrity, but then they were still a little closed off. So we kept warming them up, showing them that we actually cared about what was happening. They opened up further. They gave us insight that wouldn't have come up if we had not paid attention to what wasn't being said. So the question becomes, when auditing, how in the world do we actually listen to the unspoken? How do we listen to the unspoken? Let's talk about that. Pay attention to those nonverbal cues. You know good and well when you say something and people give you this strange look. Now, oftentimes as auditors, we ignore it because sometimes it's like, what's the movie? A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth. But you've got to notice that body language. If a client hesitates before answering a question, ask them, is there something you're hesitant to share? Now, I gotta tell you, be ready for the repercussion. Here's what happened to me. I remember one organization I worked for, seemed like every time I turned around, we were investigating something. And in meetings, I would actually drop this phrase. I would say, is there something you're hesitant to share? If you don't feel like sharing it now in a room full of people, you can reach out to me afterwards. Whew. I would get letters, handwritten letters sometimes. People wanted to be anonymous. Sometimes they call into the whistleblower hotline, which was anonymous. Other times they would come up to me and just say, "Look, I couldn't talk to you in that meeting, but can we meet at this restaurant at 6 p.m. tonight and have a discussion?" And that restaurant would be like 50 miles outside of the city because they had things that they wanted to disclose. When you acknowledge that someone looks uncomfortable, give them space to come to you when they're ready, you will be surprised things that people will disclose to you. And Mohammed is here. Good to see you. Mohammed says hello. Hello, Mohammed. Hopefully you are well. Phil says, "Oh, so good. Listen, listen to the unspoken." Everything is falling apart over here, you all. Listen to the unspoken. Yeah. Now, first tip under listen to the unspoken, though, is pay attention to those nonverbal cues. Because believe me, they are everywhere. Now, the second tip under listen to the unspoken is create a safe space. Like I just said, in a meeting, sometimes people aren't going to say that thing in front of their boss. But if you open it up, let them know this is a safe space. If they trust you, if you've built up enough trust, they will come to you. I worked at one organization where people just kept coming to me, bringing me stuff, evidence of wrongdoing before they even went to the management team. To me, that spoke volumes. They did not trust the management team. They trusted an auditor more than they did the management team that they worked for. We ended up doing quite a few investigations. Some things were not good. Some of you know parts of the story because if you come to my training courses, I'm very real and raw. I'm not one of those trainers that reads from a PowerPoint slide deck and gives you things that you can't use. I'll tell you about my real world experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Anyway, you've got to be more empathetic to your audit clients. And today we're talking about 5 ways to show empathy with your audit clients. What we just talked about was pay attention to those nonverbal cues, listening to the unspoken, and creating a safe space for people to come to you with things. Empathy is the word that people throw around nowadays, and some people throw it around lightly. Empathy in auditing simply means understanding your client's perspective. What pressures are they under? What challenges are they facing? In order to do that, you have to be able to step into their shoes. Stepping into their shoes can help you see the audit through their eyes. And that is our next point. 5 ways to show empathy with your audit clients. Step into their shoes. I remember during an audit, I found out that a client was managing 2 major projects on top of dealing with me. And I was upset because they weren't getting us things timely, but I never asked. What else are you dealing with? What else is on your plate? Because sometimes we act like we are the most important thing in the room. Don't act like I'm the only one. Once I acknowledged their workload and offered to adjust our timeline slightly, they became much more cooperative. So, again, let's be honest. We have a lot more flexibility with our timelines than they do. But oftentimes we're afraid to ask. And then we're also afraid to go back to our audit management team and tell them what the client is facing and suggesting something that is more workable for them and for us. And so what we do is we get the pressure from our audit team and we pass that pressure down to our audit clients. You know what that does? That just creates more pressure for everyone. But by stepping into our client's shoes, we exercise a little bit of empathy and we can help them out as well as help ourselves out. Now, the question becomes though, how do you step into their shoes? Well, the big thing is you have to acknowledge their challenges. Now, don't get me wrong, we got some clients that will just make up stuff. Oh, I have to deal with this and this and this, and it may not even be true. That's only a small minority. Most of them will be open and honest with their challenges. So you need to show that you understand their workload. You can say something like, I know you're juggling a lot, but how can we make this easier for all parties involved and all of our objectives? Because at the end of the day, if we are in line with their objective, it is in line with the company's objective. And so we all should be moving towards the same goal. Explaining it to them that way can make a real big difference. So, stepping into our client's shoes, first thing we have to do is acknowledge their challenges. The next thing we need to do is be flexible where possible. We can adjust timelines to accommodate their priorities if it's reasonable, but we won't know if it's reasonable if we don't ask. Even if we do ask, if we don't act, then we still have done nothing wrong. Now, I know we probably have some mid level auditors listening saying it's easier said than done. You were a chief audit executive, Rob. True. But you have to know how to communicate to the people above you in your auditing department and explain to them the entire situation and figure out something that is workable. Life is all about compromise. Everything is a compromise. Our clients have to compromise some when we're auditing. We have to compromise some when we are auditing. We just simply have to figure out what we're going to compromise, when we're going to compromise, and how we are going to compromise, because everything in life is a compromise. And people who are willing to come to the table with a compromising spirit show more empathy. So, on today's episode of Audit Bites, we're talking about 5 ways to show empathy with audit clients. And no, we are not done yet. We've not gone through all 5 yet. But what I want to do is take a small pause. I want to talk to you about the first and best AI system for internal auditors. Beta testers, check your inbox today. We've got beta testers for our system. And what we're going to do is start feeding the results to you all. I'm going to let you know what our beta testers think. What I've created is artificial intelligence for internal auditors that is a productivity and an educational tool. So it does 2 things. It helps us to be more efficient while we're auditing, but it also trains auditors on specific things like how to plan, how to do better research, how to write and construct better process narratives, root cause analysis and critical thinking, and how to just communicate better. And Phil says it, communication is key. Communicate. You guys notice the way Phil put that piano in there? Phil is a singer. This man has a voice that is just wonderful, like an angel. Everything is on brand for Phil. Phil is a wonderful guy. Look at this. I like that. I caught that, Phil. I like that. That was that was very catchy. That was very, very catchy. I wish I had my hand clap here. Because if I did, I would give you my hand clap. But I don't have my hand clap with me right now. Darn it. As you can see, Phil, level up my I'm trying to level up my live streaming game. You notice I have my really nice transitions here. I've got my sound effects. We're trying to make it happen over here, man. This is a professional setting over here. So anyway, that was our small break. Hey, look, let's get back to our regularly scheduled program. I think we're on number 5. I believe we're on reason number 5, or tip number 5, to be more empathetic with your audit clients. Now, this one initially is going to shock you all based on the way that I say it, but I want you to just really pay attention to what I say. If you want to be more empathetic with your audit clients, you have to react rationally emotional. Yeah, you heard that right. Rationally emotional. It's about showing empathy without letting emotions cloud our judgment. Let me explain what I mean by that. React rationally emotional. Again, you heard that right. It's about showing empathy without letting emotions cloud your judgment. Now, I remember I had one client who was visibly upset during a meeting. Instead of ignoring it, I called it out and I said, "It seems like something is bothering you. Do you want to talk about it?" They explained how they had just had a rough meeting with the leadership team, and now they had to come and deal with me, and that they didn't have time for any of this nonsense. Client even let out a curse word. And I'm looking like, who in the world are you? You got the wrong one on the right day. But I didn't respond in kind. I didn't respond the same way that they were responding to me. What I did though is I said, "You seem extremely upset. Whatever you talked about in that meeting must have been really bad. Would you like to talk about it? We had a 30-minute conversation about how they didn't have enough resources to do the job that they were hired to do, and how that was truly upsetting them because they really wanted to do a good job. And now this audit was going to truly ding them and make them look really, really bad. That moment of understanding made the rest of our conversation go a whole lot smoother. Can you imagine if I had cursed back at this audit client? Because believe me, I was 2 seconds away from doing it. But I decided I better not because, well, if I had cursed them back, what would they have done next? I would hope they wouldn't have gotten violent, but if they had, I probably would have, I don't know what I would have done actually. But what I do know is we have to remain calm because, well, no one wants to go to jail for hitting anyone at work. That just doesn't make any sense. That's the absolute wrong move to make. And so what we have to do is kind of calm down and stay calm under pressure. Which brings me to the first point. How do you react rationally, emotionally? And that is you stay calm under pressure. When you see someone doing something out of character, you don't say, "What the heck is wrong with you?" Even though you're thinking it, ask them, "Hey, I understand this might be frustrating, but let's try to work through this together." You got to give them one, maybe two chances. Now, if they still act out of character, you have my permission to take alternative measures to remedy the situation. But you have to at least give it one, maybe two chances. So, how do you react rationally, emotionally? First thing you got to do is stay calm under pressure. The second thing I want you to do is acknowledge their feelings because something might be happening that has absolutely nothing to do with you. And if you can find out what that something is, you can get to the root cause of what's bothering them now so that you can work with them better in the future. Help them move past that emotional state. So, acknowledge their feelings, show empathy without losing professionalism. For example, you could say something like, "I can see why this would be upsetting, but let's try and find a solution. I can see why us auditing you could be upsetting, especially if your management team is not giving you all the resources that you need. Let's see how we can find a solution and maybe use this audit to get you the resources that you actually need." I've actually used that on many occasions with audit clients, and it has worked out quite well. I kid you not, it has worked out quite well. Ah. Thank you so much for the nuggets. Empathy is key in building rapport with clients. Thank you. You are very welcome. I think that you are a first time viewer, at least a first time commenter. So I need to look and see if we actually are connected on LinkedIn. If we are not, we probably need to connect. If you're an auditor, especially, because I mean, that's the primary audience that I serve. But today, on this episode of Audit Bites, episode number 68, Empathy While Auditing. If you missed the 5 points, go back, take a listen to the episode. This episode is brought to you by That Audit Guy, which is me, my company. We provide audit training for IIA chapters, other auditing chapters and associations, private companies, especially if you have a large company with a lot of auditors. You can bring us in and we'll get you quality training for your entire audit staff, whether virtual or in person or on demand, and it is tailored to your organization. So, again, 5 ways to show empathy with audit clients. Listen, if you found this episode helpful, share it with a colleague, leave some comments on LinkedIn and YouTube. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel, please. We get no love over there. And tell me, what is one way you've shown empathy during an audit? I would absolutely love to hear your stories on what you've done. This has been Audit Bites. I am your host, Robert Berry, reminding you that empathy isn't a weakness. It is your greatest strength. And with that said, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching this episode of Audit Bites. If you receive value from this podcast, do us a favor. First, tell other auditors. Second, give us a 5-star review. And finally, talk to Robert about training your auditors. Our contact information is on our website, www.thatauditguy.com. It's also where you will find our course catalog, on-demand courses, a kick-butt blog, other podcasts, Robert's best-selling books, and last but not least, audit merch. That's right, we have audit hats, shirts, mugs, and more. Thanks for watching and listening. See you next episode.